Hello everyone, this is Jerry or BladeEdge86 as I'm known on YouTube, and for the past few weeks I've just barely paid attention to the latest political sideshow that our good friends at the District of Criminals and their masters on Wall Street have cooked up with the so-called debate over the so-called debt ceiling, which Congress has raised only 1,000,000 times. Like it's no big deal, yet they want us to somehow believe that this time it might be different, that Congress might not raise the debt ceiling this time, which I remind you again was raised 1,000,000 times. This year alone, it had to have been raised at least 5 or 6 times. I mean, by many of the same members of Congress that say that they'll now vote against it. So, why are they doing this now? I mean, contrary to what has been the popular belief for far too long, the Democrats and Republicans have no set of principles other than doing the bidding of their masters on Wall Street while pretending to serve us, the people, and keeping the illusion that we have a viable choice in elections. The Republicans, thanks in large part to pressure from the Tea Party, as in the real Tea Party founded by Ron Paul supporters, and not the joke the Republican establishment's trying to turn it into, with some mixed success. And the people are starting to wake up to the consequences of these policies, have to pretend that they are the fiscally conservative adults while still delivering the goodies to the special interests. I mean, their favorite way of doing this is to take a spending bill. Let's say that spending bill is $500 billion. To get together and say, let's cut $50 billion from this bill. And then they get together with the Democrats and say they want to cut $30 billion. And after some deal making, they both agree to cut $40 billion. They pass the spending bill with the cuts they agreed on and then move on to the next bill. When the Republicans go to their constituents, they say, we cut $40 billion, even though they voted for an additional $460 billion worth of spending. They act like it's a cut. When you don't need to be a math genius to know that that's not a cut, that's still increased spending. And then the Democrats say, we agreed to cut $40 billion, but it's still not enough for these no good Republicans. They want Granny to eat dog food under a cardboard box under the latest overpass. And while we're still on the subject of Democrats, they're trying to scare the millions of Americans who are dependent on programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and government employees like soldiers by saying that they won't receive their checks if Congress doesn't raise the so-called debt ceiling while pretending to stand up for the most vulnerable among us, when they could easily cut the untold billions of dollars we give in bailouts, corporate welfare, and the imperial adventures of Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya instead of this blatant act of extortion. And they, of course, conveniently leave out the fact that we had a government shutdown in 1995 and 96, and, well, guess what? The Social Security checks kept on coming. So you guys don't worry. They're only trying to scare you people. But anyway, I've come to the conclusion, though, that there is no debt ceiling. A true debt ceiling would be an actual objective limit on how much our government can borrow. Now, as long as Congress has the ability to raise the debt ceiling on a whim, and as long as the president threatens to raise it himself if Congress doesn't do it, which they will, and the Federal Reserve is able to print money out of thin air, such a limit is impossible. I did some research on the issue and found that we didn't have a debt ceiling until 1917. That's right, we didn't have one until 1917 when Congress passed the Second Liberty Bond Act. Before that, Congress passed each individual debt separately. In other words, if Congress wanted to pass a spending bill, they would then have to pass another bill issuing the debt to pay that individual spending bill. The 1917 debt ceiling, though, only dealt with bonds. And debt ceiling we know today wasn't put into place until the passage of the Public Debt Acts of 1939 and 1941, which took the issuance of debt out of the hands of Congress and put it into the hands of the Treasury Department. And the deal is that they can only do this so much as the debt ceiling, quote-unquote, allows. But like I said, since Congress can raise it at whim, that's pretty much meaningless. And it's a violation of Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which states that Congress and only Congress has the power to, quote, borrow money on the credit of the United States. Since having the so-called debt ceiling, the share of public debt is higher than ever before. We have a stated public debt of almost $15 trillion. And that does not even include all the money that's part of the numerous black budgets passed behind all our backs. Now that's $46,676 per citizen, or $130,158 per taxpayer. And estimated federal spending this year so far is $3 trillion, and interest per citizen is $11,672. All numbers courtesy of the U.S. National Debt Clock. And since the Federal Reserve banker coup of 1913, our dollar has lost 95% of its value. In 2008, it would have taken $21.57 to equal $1 in today's currency. And all the dollars printed by the Federal Reserve are all printed at interest, which they charge to the government, which adds more debt. Debt made through fraud. Debt which we do not legitimately owe, and we therefore have no obligation whatsoever to pay. Don't get me wrong, we should pay the debts we legitimately owe, such as we owe to China, but I fail to see how the Federal Reserve charging interest on money they print, our money, is any different than if I printed dollar bills on my computer, bought out my local city hall, and forced the population to use my money and charge the city interest for that money. Now we need to, for the sakes of us and future generations, to end this madness. Vote out the corrupt politicians in both parties who have sold us into a system of perpetual debt slavery. Stop spending and borrowing money we don't have and securing the value of our currency by once again backing all money we print by gold and silver free of interest. Arrest the criminal bankers who have defrauded us, the people, and have them pay back every dime they've stolen from us, and return our republic to a true free market where government only intervenes in private commerce and to prevent and